All right, today we're going to decode the mind of a titan. We all look at LeBron James and see this physical marvel, right? But we're going to bypass the highlight reels and dig into the psychological blueprint, the actual code for elite performance that you, as a founder, can plug right into your own game. Think of this as a masterclass in the psychology of winning.
And let's just get this out of the way right off the bat. This is the biggest myth. We love to credit the genetic lottery for his success, but honestly, the physical gifts are just the starting line. The real engine driving the whole empire isn't his muscle, it's his mind.
Okay, so let's dive into the psychological blueprint. What is it? We're going to break down two key parts, something called a promotion-focused mindset and a state of neural efficiency. Now, these aren't just buzzwords, they're programmable skills. And the best part? It's a code that any entrepreneur, especially when you're under massive pressure, can actually learn to write for themselves.
So first, we have to completely tear down this idea that success is somehow predetermined. For any founder out there who's ever thought, man, I just wasn't born with it, this section is for you.
You know, psychology has this really cool concept called range of reaction. And think of it like this. Your genes might give you a knack for coding, or maybe you're a natural at sales, but that's just a potential range. It's the environment you build, it's the late nights, the obsessive practice, the relentless networking. That's what decides whether you end up at the bottom or the absolute peak of that range.
And here's the trap, right? This is where so many people get stuck. They use their perceived lack of gifts as what we call a sabotage script. You know that little voice in your head that says, I'm not a natural leader, or I'm just not wired for fundraising. That's it. It's a cognitive get-out-of-jail-free card to stop trying. But the elite minds, they treat their genetics like raw data. It's the starting point, not the finish line. It's just data that needs to be processed through relentless, focused effort.
So now that we've debunked that whole myth of genetic destiny, let's look at the next layer of the blueprint. This shift, it's about fundamentally changing your internal operating system. It's about switching from playing defense to playing offense all the time. Okay, now what's really fascinating about this slide is it gets to the core difference in motivation for businesses. A founder with a prevention focus, they're obsessed with avoiding screw-ups, running out of cash, making a bad hire. They're playing to not lose. But LeBron, and honestly every great founder out there, operates with a promotion focus. Their goal is to hit that ideal self, that grand vision of the company and the leader they're trying to become. They're all about gains, about innovation, about capturing the market. They play to win, period. And listen, this isn't just some fluffy, feel-good, self-help talk. When you actually make that switch from avoiding pain to promoting gain, your brain literally stops pumping out stress chemicals like cortisol and starts releasing neurotransmitters that build real confidence and resilience. You are chemically rewiring yourself for victory. It's science. So, if you've changed your mindset, awesome. But how do you make that change stick? Well, you have to physically rewire your brain for high-pressure performance, just like a world-class athlete does. And this just brilliantly illustrates the biological process. So when you're learning a new skill, let's say you're trying to master your investor pitch, your brain first goes through what's called blooming, where it creates just tons of new connections. Then, through deliberate, focused practice, it starts pruning away all the clumsy, inefficient pathways. And what you're left with is neural efficiency, a state where your brain makes faster, better decisions under pressure because all that mental noise is gone. This is actually the key to lowering performance anxiety. It lets you make sharp, intuitive calls in a high-stakes meeting without your brain just overheating from all the clutter. You want the best analogy for this? Think about upgrading from a really messy desk to a perfectly organized digital file system. You're not getting more brain power. You're just creating way less mental noise. You put in the work organizing the files, so now you can find exactly what you need in a split second, without any of the anxiety.
So this brings us to the stories we tell ourselves. I mean, LeBron came from a childhood that science now tells us can physically shrink the parts of the brain responsible for self-regulation. By all accounts, he had every excuse to get stuck in a bad story. So you have to ask yourself, especially after a rough quarter or a launch that didn't go as planned, who is writing the story of your business? Are you letting those past failures define the next chapter? Or are you the one picking up the pen? So the crucial point really is this distinction right here. An external locus of control is when you're blaming the market, the investors, the economy. But an internal locus of control is saying, no, I am the owner of my actions and my results. This belief, this kind of radical ownership, it's not just a nice mindset to have. It is the absolute foundation for sustainable, long-term career as a founder.
Titans like LeBron, and you can even look at people like Oprah Winfrey. They achieved what psychologists call identity achievement status. They consciously authored a new identity for themselves, totally separate from their difficult pasts. For a founder dealing with something like imposter syndrome, this means you decide to be the CEO, to be the leader, to be the innovator, even if your past experience is screaming otherwise. You're not faking it till you make it. You are consciously writing a new success schema for yourself.
Okay, so you've got the mindset, you've started rewriting your internal script. Fantastic. But a new story is totally useless without action. So this brings us to the part that, let's be honest, everyone wants to skip. The daily, boring, relentless groundwork that truly separates the top performers from everybody else.
There's an old saying that just perfectly captures this idea. So many founders are busy. I mean, they're really, really busy, but they're squeezing the horn. They're trapped in back-to-back meetings. They're answering every single email, chasing vanity metrics. They're working hard, for sure, but on all the wrong things. And this slide really shows that divide. The consumer self-habit is trying to buy the result. Getting the fancy software, hiring the expensive consultant, before actually producing the skill. But the producer self-habit, which is LeBron in the gym day after day, is all about focusing on the groundwork. For a founder, this is the cold calls. It's the code refinement. It's the customer feedback sessions. This is the craftsperson at their workbench, totally focused on the process, not the prize. Because they know that's how you build real, lasting business equity.
And now we get to the single most important tool for actually implementing all of this. This is the practical technique you can start using the second this is over.
It's called verbal fabrication, and LeBron is an absolute masterclass in how to use this professionally. This is all about your internal conversation. See, most of us, we're really harsh judges. We miss a sales target, and the immediate verdict is, I'm a failure. An elite performer, though, is a craftsperson. He doesn't put his identity on trial and declare, I'm a loser. He puts the action on the workbench and says, that execution was unskillful. How can I refine it? You see the difference? One is a verdict. The other is a diagnosis.
So here's how you put it into practice. It's the 24-hour thought audit. When a negative thought pops up, like, this new product is definitely going to fail, just stop and ask yourself, if I let this thought run my brain for the next 24 hours, what behavior will it produce? And if the answer is procrastination, fear, or just doing nothing, you drop it immediately. Then you reframe it like a craftsperson.
So let's bring it all home. LeBron James is not a miracle of genetics. He is a manifestation. He is the result of a mind that has been deliberately, systematically programmed to reject old limiting code and instead run a script of possibility, of ownership, and of relentless groundwork.
The ultimate insight from this whole LeBron blueprint is really this. You are not the code, you are the coder. The power to write a new success schema is entirely in your hands. So the only question left is, what line of that sabotage script are you going to delete today?